Hello everyone, my name is Clantis and welcome to the Iron Bars, my true crime YouTube channel. So here's a bit of a disclaimer, guys. This story is a gruesome one, so there are going to be some trigger words that I'm going to be using in this case. So if you feel that you are going to get triggered by some words that I'm going to be mentioning in this video, please do click off and go watch something else. Maybe next time when I speak about a softer case or cases that do not have like graphic descriptions of violence and all that sort of stuff. But for this video, unfortunately, I would advise that you click off and go watch something else. However, if you are a person that enjoys this sort of content, welcome to my YouTube channel, The Iron Bars. So without further ado, let's get into this story because this is another serial killer. So today's case is the case of a serial killer by the name of Jimmy Maketta. He's also known as the Jesus Killer. As long as you stay long watching this video, you will find out why he is called Jesus Killer. So this case takes place in the Western Cape, which is another 9th province of South Africa. This is where the city of Cape Town is situated. So for 9 months, a small little town just outside of Cape Town called Philippi was going through a very, very terrifying moment. They had a serial killer on the loose that was terrorizing their community. It is basically a farming community. Most farm laborers, this is where they live, and this is where basically they do everything and then go to work in the nearby farms. Unfortunately, for 9 months, the South African Police Service was also in denial that they had a serial killer in their hands, despite the community telling them that they have a serial killer and they want him caught. But the police, for some reason, they were just blasé. They did not necessarily care about that community simply because of the stigma that is attached to the people that lived in Philippi. So they had all kinds of odds stacked up against them because number one, it was a very poor community. Secondly, the members of that community, they drank a lot of alcohol, and so the police did not necessarily take them seriously. Not even the government took them seriously because that community was so underdeveloped. The government seemed to have forgotten about their existence altogether. They did not have clean running water, they did not have electricity, they did not have tarred roads. Basically, they did not have any kind of municipal service delivery that was happening in that community. However, the community, all they did was to mind their own business and go work in the farms, come back, have a glass of beverage, and basically go to bed. Unfortunately, this community was to be terrorized for the next 9 months between April and December of 2005. So the police work was so terrible that even the serial killer himself decided to sort of like drop hints at the police. For some reason, I think maybe he wanted to get caught. Maybe he was sick and tired of raping and killing people. So he would sort of like draw up maps of diagrams about where the bodies, the police can find them. So it is just a heartbreaking story, and it's a very upsetting and frustrating story, especially when the police are so complacent as well as so just disregarding of those people's lives. So let me stop rambling and let's talk about the serial killer. Like I said, his name is Jimmy Maketta. So Jimmy Maketta was born between 1964 and 1965. So I did my best to try and find his full birth date. As you guys know that I like to know the perpetrator's full birthday, including their zodiac sign. So I really hope that Jimmy Maketta is not a Cancer. Otherwise, if he is, we definitely deny him because that is not our nature. Just saying. He was born in the Western Cape in a small township called Grabouw, and he had 15 other siblings. Unfortunately, Jimmy Maketta's upbringing was horrible. He would sometimes not go to school. In South Africa, we call that dodging school, when you don't go to school. And sometimes when he went to school during recess, he would basically disappear and would not come back. And as a result of that, he ended up quitting school altogether. He even married in Grabouw in the 1980s to a woman called Nina, and they had 3 children. So Jimmy Maketta was known to be hands-on with his children. Basically, he enjoyed fatherhood. He loved his children. He made sure that his children were well taken care of versus how he was brought up. I think maybe he promised himself that one day when he has children, they will never live the kind of life that he led when he was growing up. He made sure that they went to school. He made sure that he had a job. He made sure that his wife was taken care of, because the wife does testify and say, Jimmy, at the beginning of their marriage, he was so attentive. He was sensitive towards her. He made sure that he was showering her with gifts and made sure that she was always happy. Unfortunately, all that just changed out of the blue one day. So he started getting violent towards Nina for absolutely no good reason. He would beat her up. Sometimes he would even break her bones, landing her in hospital to get treatment. Unfortunately, Nina would not open any case against Jimmy. As a result, whenever she came back home and then they would have a little argument, he would then start beating her again to a pulp. Sometimes he would even sexually abuse his wife. So one of the days, Nina had had enough of Jimmy because she found out that Jimmy was having an affair with several women. So when she found out about that, she went straight to the divorce court and signed the papers, handed them over to Jimmy to sign because she wanted a divorce. It was over as far as she was concerned. So she tolerated being beaten to a pulp, but when he started having an affair, that's what broke the camel's back. I would think that the moment a man lays his hand on you, that is a sign for you to get out of that marriage or relationship or whatever situation you are in, because it will lead to something far more serious than him breaking your bones. So after serving him with the divorce papers, Nina kicked out Jimmy, where he went and lived in the bushes of Philippi. So while Jimmy was living in the bushes in Philippi, he met another woman by the name of Janette, whom he fell in love with and even married her. Once again, all habits die hard. He started beating this woman up as well to a pulp. He would even rape her. When Janetta realized that she married a monster, she kicked him out as well, where he once again landed up in the bushes of Philippi. Like I said, the community of Philippi, their pastime was alcohol. So he would sit up in the hill, watch the community's people going in and out of taverns. Just when they are drunk enough and then they come or pass where he lives, that is when he would pounce on them. So one of the things that Jimmy loved about Philippi was the fact that it was hidden away from public eye. It was just a community that is in the backyard of Cape Town. So he knew very well that the police as well as the Cape Town community would not even care if there are people dropping dead in that community. So it was an advantage to him. And the second advantage was the fact that the elders or the adults of the community, they indulge in alcohol. Basically, that was their pastime because they did not have electricity to basically pull in cable TV and those sort of stuff. For him, it was a perfect environment to begin his terror. So on the 2nd of April 2005, a woman by the name of Bonnie Swart was walking nearby where Jimmy was staying when she came across a man who basically was staring at her and asked her to come to him. But Bonnie was like, why should I come to you? And then he said to her, come into the bushes so we can have sex. When Bonnie realized that if I refuse, I'm going to be in danger, that is when she started running. When she started running, that is when the man started chasing after her and he caught up to her. And when he caught up to her, he took a rock and started beating her on the face. So she fell unconscious. That is when the man started tearing up parts of her clothes and tied her hands. Then he dragged her to a nearby tree where he tied her up to the tree and then he began to rape her multiple times for several hours. After he was done, he basically left her tied to the tree and he disappeared into the night. However, the following day, Bonnie was still tied up to the tree and she was falling in and out of consciousness when another man walked by. So when he realized that there was a woman tied to a tree, he ran and rescued her, untied her, and then carried her to the local clinic to get treatment. So on the 7th or the 14th of April 2005, another woman by the name of Alice B, she was walking along the same path as Bonnie, together with her 2 children and her boyfriend, when she noticed that there was a man that was staring at her just her as they walked by him. So when the man realized that the woman was with her boyfriend, that is when he knelt down on his knees and hands, and then he started crawling towards them. However, Alice B's boyfriend did see the man, so he just assumed that maybe the guy is drunk or homeless or maybe crazy or something that was going on with him. But he made sure that Alice B and the kids, together with himself, they were safe enough to get out of that area, which was bushy and foresty at the same time. So they managed to get out of the bush. So when they got to a certain point in the veld, that is when they went their separate ways. Because Alice B's boyfriend lived in another part of Philippi, while Alice B and her children lived with her mother in another part of Philippi. So they basically went their separate ways. So when Alice B and the kids got home, Alice B realized that her mother was not home. So she did not have any worries, so she began to do whatever needed to be done, like cooking and cleaning and basically preparing the house until the mom returned so that she can have something to eat. So the day went on, the mother still had not returned. The sun set, the mother still had not returned. It was midnight, the mother still not returned. The following day, she had not returned. So Alice B started wondering, hey, what happened to my mom? Because usually when she goes out, she usually goes out to friends in nearby to go drink in a tavern and then come back home. So this is very unusual of her to just disappear like that without saying anything. So Alice B thought maybe my mom got a job, a better job somewhere outside Philippi, maybe in Cape Town. So she's going to wait for her until she returns. But still, that was very strange to her that she would just leave without saying a word. So days turned to weeks up until the children basically were playing in the yard of a certain neighbor, and the neighbor was getting irritated because they had visitors and the kids were just making noise like the ones that are making noise outside right now and disturbing this video. Anyways, guys, please do ignore that. It's the holidays here in South Africa and the kids are at home. So anyways, the neighbor was like, guys, go and play outside, go play somewhere else because you are making noise, and besides, the yard is full of bottles. I don't want any of you to get hurt. So the kids complied. So they decided to go to a nearby irrigation dam. I'm just going to call it a dam because I seem to be having a problem pronouncing irrigation. So I'm just going to say a dam. So basically the irrigation dam was in a bit of like a lower area, and then they would be like in a hill-like area, and it was full of grass in that hill-like area. And when the kids got to that hill like area and they looked into the irrigation dam, or dam as I said, they saw what looked like a body of a male floating in the water. So the kids basically were pointing at they were pointing at the body and saying, hey, look what is there, look what's there. And then one of the kids basically ran to the dam, and when they turned the body, it turned out that the body was Alice B's mother. Basically, the two kids whom one of them turned the body and realized that it was their grandma. The community of Philippi was outraged. The reason why they were outraged was because the police still had not caught the two previous bodies that was found in the same dam a few weeks ago. And the police did not seem to be interested in finding who this killer was. So now there's a third body, and it is Alice B's mother's body. And then the committee was like, no ways, we need answers, we need this solved right now, because it's becoming really dangerous in the community. So the killer at first was basically just killing women. Oh, I forgot to mention that the grandma was raped and strangled to death by this killer. Same goes with the two previous bodies. They were found raped and strangled to death. So by August of 2005, 6 bodies had already been found in that dam, and the police were still not interested in getting to the bottom of this situation. All they kept saying to the community was, we are trying our best to find who the killer was. So my question is, if you are doing your best, don't you think that the modus operandi should have shown you that you have a serial killer in your hands? Secondly, the serial killer seems to be dumping bodies in the same dam all the time. Don't you think you should be surveilling this dam, or maybe putting up some sort of traps? I don't know. So why is it that the police are saying, oh, we are trying our best, or we are trying our best to solve the situation, and yet the bodies keep piling up? And the bodies do pile up. So at this point, the community kept telling the police that we have a serial killer on the loose. But the police were saying, no, it's not a serial killer because the MO is different. And the MO indeed was different because the killer started killing men as well, not just women. He was raping women and then killing them. So he started adopting a different MO every time he killed. So basically, he started killing couples. He was doing exactly what Cedric Marquez was doing as well. So he would see a couple, usually the couple would be coming from a tavern and they're obviously drunk, and then he would take advantage of the woman by raping her and then kills her, or he will kill the male that she's walking with while the woman watched. So the police felt that the serial killer has an MO, and usually the MO is repetitive, and at the same time they always stick to one type of person or people. Usually it will either be male or it will just be women, and the women must be of a certain type. Not just kill random women and then kill a random man. So that is not a serial killer as far as the police were concerned. So the police basically felt that it was different people that was killing other people in the community of Philippi. And they also threw in the fact that the community of Philippi were drunkards. So some drunkards, maybe they'll have like a drunken fight and then they'll end up killing each other and then dump each other in the nearby irrigation dam. So basically the police were coming up with all sorts of excuses instead of doing investigations, despite the fact that this killer was leaving evidence everywhere for the police to collect and link up the sixth death that has already happened. But the police were just not interested in doing that. Why? The police also made the excuse that it is not a serial killer because some of the victims were not killed. They were basically let free unharmed, only raped. I don't understand how being raped is not being harmed because you are harmed. But that's what the police were saying, that no, some of these victims, they survived, they were not killed or harmed in any way, but they were raped. That's harm. So this killer, whenever he killed men, he used an axe. If he did not use an axe, he would use an iron bar that he would basically smash on the person's face. Basically, his target or his victim would see it coming. He would just go right on their face and smash their face in with a bat or some sort of iron bar, and also he would hack them with an axe on the face. He always dealt with the face whenever he attacked his victims. Like I said, this killer enjoyed killing couples. So whenever he saw couples, he was very, very happy. So now you must also understand that the couples is not necessarily lovers. It could be a woman and her brother. It could be a woman and her father. It could be a woman and her male friend or a male neighbor. It could be just anybody, as long as he assumed that they were a couple, he had his way with them. Now, what was not clear was the fact that if he raped the men as well before killing them, or he would just hack them to death. I'm not sure because nothing is said there whether he raped the man, but we know that he killed them. So the killer did leave a trail of survivors who were extremely crippled by trauma of what had happened to them. Either they are traumatized by how they watched their loved one get killed in their presence, or the fact that they were raped and almost killed, because some of these women did survive the attack. So when the police started gathering information about the killers, not the killer, one of the common themes that the survivors would tell the police was the fact that the man that attacked them, he had what seemed to be a tattoo on his forehead written Jesus Killer. Some of these women would describe the tattoo to be either a prison tattoo, or he took some ashes and then he wrote Jesus Killer on his forehead, or maybe it was some sort of paint. So they were not really sure what exactly this tattoo was, but they knew that it was written Jesus Killer. Now the question that one is asking is, did this guy have like a God personality disorder? Is it called God personality? Please do comment down below and let me know what is it called when you think you are God. Because at some point, one of the women said he told her that he is Jesus and he had come to take her away. So after the 6 bodies were discovered in August of 2005, the killer seemed to have taken a rest. People, for some reason, felt some relief. Some had even left the community altogether because they were afraid that they were going to be next. However, in October of 2005, he resumed his raping and killing. So around mid-October 2005, the killer went into the house of Lucas and Mina, where he broke down the door. Lucas woke up and then he told his wife to stay in bed because he suspects that the house has been broken into. And indeed, the house was being broken into, because the moment that Lucas came across the intruder, that's when the intruder hacked him on the face with an axe. Lucas fell to the ground and then they basically went outside and he still tried to fight off the intruder. One of the neighbors heard the commotion. He came running to rescue Lucas. That is when, unfortunately, he too got hacked to death. The intruder then went back into the house where he unfortunately raped Mina. After he was done raping Mina, he went back outside and dragged Lucas and the neighbor's body to the dam. So when the police came and interviewed Mina, she had said that it was not just one man that had come into the house. There were three. One of them happened to be the Jesus killer, because she did see the tattoo on his forehead written Jesus killer. And the other two men were outside killing her husband. At first, she did not know that the neighbor was also killed, which basically kind of like threw off the fact that there is a serial killer in the area, and basically favoring what the police has been saying all along, saying that it is not a serial killer. There are several people that are killing people in the area. But it's quite interesting why Mina thought that there were three intruders when in fact it was one intruder. So by end of October, 6 women have been reported to have been raped and 8 people have been murdered. And at this point in time, the community of Philippi were crippled with fear. Everybody was just suspicious of each other, which was not a very good thing. Some people who had criminal records were starting to be looked at differently because the police were just simply failing them. Fortunately, the media caught wind of what was going on in Philippi, and that is when they descended down to Philippi to cover the story of the bodies that have been piling up since April of 2005. Still, the police were not happy with the fact that the media was out there basically peddling fear amongst the people of Philippi. They kept telling the media, stop saying that there is a serial killer in Philippi, when in fact it is several people that are killing other people in Philippi. But the people of Philippi still felt that it was a serial killer, despite the fact that some of the survivors have described the killer to have a Jesus killer tattoo on his forehead. And the police still said, no, there is no such a thing. However, the police, because of the pressure they were getting from the media, that is when they went and arrested a 49-year-old Stanley Martins. Now, Stanley Martins is very well known by the police because he has been in and out of jail since he was a young man. And as a result, the police felt that because the community and the media keep putting pressure on them to find who these serial killers or serial killer is, they then pin all these murders onto Stanley Martins. Embarrassingly for the police, no evidence was linked to Stanley Martins. Number one, Stanley Martins was a very skinny, frail man because of alcoholism and other ailments that he may have had. And there was no way that the man of his stature could actually overpower men that have been killed during these killings from April to about October. So basically his defense lawyer was like, there is no way that a man that looks like this would have done something of this type of nature. And another thing that his defense lawyer did was to interview all the survivors. He basically took a picture of Stanley and then took them to all the survivors to identify if this is the man that had raped them and had killed their loved one. All the survivors said, no, this is not the man that had attacked us or killed our loved ones. So the police then realized that they definitely screwed up on this one, and as a result, Stanley was let gone. Basically, the court acquitted him of all the charges that were pinned against him falsely by the police. Unfortunately for Stanley, his reputation was damaged in Philippi. people started calling him the Jesus killer. They believe that he is definitely the killer because there is no way that the police would have made such a mistake. And the police were quite confident when they arrested Stanley and said they believe that they had the right man in custody, and they believe that indeed he was the Jesus killer. And that basically tarnished Stanley's reputation. So it is clear that the police were not listening to the community. They were not listening to the survivors. I would think as a police person or a police officer, you would know that there is a serial killer in your hands when all the survivors are saying the same thing, especially when they identify the serial killer to have a certain mark on their body. In this case, the serial killer had Jesus killer written on his forehead. Come on, police. You, of all people, should know that when you collect evidence, one of the things that you would ask the survivor, what is a distinctive feature that you saw on the perpetrator? And all of them said he had a Jesus killer tattoo written on his forehead. Why couldn't the police then realize that indeed we have a serial killer on our hands? So the killer, realizing that the police were not catching him quick enough, he then started basically writing or drawing up maps and diagrams of where the police would find bodies that he had killed in the previous day or previous week. So one of the women that he had raped and strangled to death, before killing her, this woman begged the killer and said to him, after killing me, could you please go and let my friend know where my body is, because I want to have a dignified funeral. The killer did comply, and indeed after killing her, he did go to the friend's house. Basically, the killer looked for the house until he found it, and then he left a note telling the friend where to find her friend's body. So every time the killer went to check if the body had been taken away, but he would find it there. So 2 days later, the body was still there. That is when the killer started drawing up a diagram for the police to come and fetch the body. And indeed, he went and dropped the letter or the diagram at the police station. When the police opened and found the diagram, that is when they went to the area, and voila, there the body of the poor woman that asked the killer, please let my friend know where my body is. So the killer would do that to several other bodies because he realized that the police were incompetent. The killer felt that the police were incompetent because they were taking way too long to catch him. Like I said earlier on, it looks like the killer wanted to get caught. Hence, he was dropping all this confetti evidence for the police to catch him. But still, the police were too incompetent to put one and one together and make an arrest. So this killer was even brave enough to go to his target victims' houses, and he would write on their walls or on their doors and tell them in Afrikaans that you are next. How terrifying is that? Some women packed up and left the community because there was no way that they were going to be next, because this man, when he killed, he was brutal. This feels like a lion is on the loose in the community and everybody is just afraid to go out, because going out means you might come across the lion and you will get eaten. So when this killer was going around communities and writing on their walls or doors telling them they might be next, that is scary. That is scary. And that is evidence for the police to realize that they have a serial killer on the loose. Oh, I forgot to mention that when Stanley was arrested, he had just returned from Cape Town. So during all these killings from April to about October, he was nowhere near Philippi. So it is impossible that he would have been the one that was killing all those people. So the police basically had egg on their face, like they always do whenever they do something like this. So for me, that is a good example of a textbook definition of defamation of character. And I wish that he has sued, but Okay, understandably, he may not have been educated enough to know that he can sue the police or the Minister of Police for wrongful arrest. So by December of 2005, 14 people had been murdered and 22 women raped. So let's give the police a break, because the man kills his last victim. And not far from the last victim's body, there was a cell phone that was left behind. So this is a break, or a big break, that the police were waiting for. So the police immediately took the phone and went through the call log, and they realized a number that was called several times. So they dialed the number, and then on the other side of the line, there was a man by the name of Daryl that answered. Then the police made an appointment with Daryl, who was living in Grabouw. So when the police got to Daryl in Grabouw, they showed him the cell phone and asked him if he knew whose numbers were these, as well as cell phone. That is when Daryl was like, hey, that's my dad's cell phone. And then the police were very happy to hear that, and they asked him, where can we find your dad? So now Daryl's father was a local painter, and he was basically busy painting some house or something, and basically introduced themselves, and he introduced himself by saying he was Jimmy Maketta. Now, Jimmy Maketta was on parole at that time for an attempted murder that he had committed several years ago. So at the police station, Jimmy Maketta denied everything. He denied that he was the Jesus killer. Of course, the police looked at his forehead and they realized that there was nothing written on his forehead. However, the police did feel like they had the right man because of the cell phone they had found next to the killer's last body. So Jimmy Maketta was thrown in a waiting cell for several days. Now, what confused me was the fact that they said several days, when in fact in South Africa, constitutionally, the police cannot hold you in a cell for more than 48 hours without charging you, and the following day you see a magistrate. So if you are arrested on a Friday, you are going to spend the weekend in jail. On Monday, you are definitely going to see the magistrate, and then you get charged for whatever crimes you've been accused of. So here they're saying several days, not quite sure, because I tried to look what several days meant, but I think it was 2 days. And just before the 48th hour expired, that is when Jimmy Maketta started scribbling down something on the piece of paper, because during his arrest, he managed to build some sort of trust relationship with one of the investigating officers. So he thought that he was writing a letter to a friend. So he was basically confessing everything that he had written on that piece of paper. He admitted to all the murders and the rapes that he had been causing in the community of Philippi. He even admitted that he would use ashes and write Jesus Killer on his forehead. So that was solid enough of a case for the state to secure a guilty verdict as well as life imprisonment. Now, what Jimmy did not realize was all the writing that he had done and submitted to his investigator friend was the fact that all that was going to be used against him in court, which shocked Jimmy. He thought, come on, you my friend, why you betrayed me like that? I thought I was just telling you what I was telling you, not necessarily for you to use it against me. Even his own lawyer did tell him, stop writing letters, because this stuff is going to be used against you. You have the right to remain silent. But Jimmy Maketta, who loved the media, he loved the fact that he was well known. His pictures were splashed all over the media, all of the newspapers and television screens. Every time he clicked on a television, there he was being spoken about, and he loved that. So he thought, by writing letters as well to his investigator friend, forgetting the policeman is a police, and his job is to put away people like him for good. So DNA samples were collected from all the survivors of Jimmy Maketta, and then they were tested against his own, and several days later, they all matched. The second thing that the police did was to call all the survivors, and then they did like a lineup, and they wanted them to identify the man that had raped them or killed their loved ones. and they all pointed at Jimmy Maketta, and they said, definitely that is him who raped us and killed our loved ones. So all that was a very solid case for the state to secure a conviction against Jimmy Maketta. So Jimmy Maketta was taken to trial, where on his first day of trial, he stood up and told the court that he is guilty of every charge that is leveled against him. So all the charges against Jimmy Maketta were 47. I am going to read them out at a later stage, but first, let me explain this. In South African criminal law, when an accused confesses, basically pleads guilty to all the charges, basically there will not be a trial. Instead, there are going to be preliminary sentencing hearings where mitigation of sentence and all this sort of stuff are going to be discussed or argued in court. Unfortunately for Jimmy Maketta, he was on parole when he committed all these crimes. So he was basically found guilty of 47 counts of, let me read them to you. 19 counts of rape, 16 counts of murder, 6 counts of house break-ins, 2 counts of robbery, 2 counts of attempted murder, and 2 counts of assault. In court, the psychologist described Jimmy Maketta as one of the most violent criminals, and he was incredibly dangerous, and the court should make sure that he never sees the light of day ever again. On the 3rd of May 2007, Jimmy Maketta was given a mandatory 25 years imprisonment, which he is going to be eligible for parole in 2030. However, the court sentenced Jimmy Maketta to a further 1,340 years in prison. So meaning that if he does get parole in 2030, he will basically go back to jail, where he's going to start serving his 1,340 years in prison. Meaning Jimmy Maketta will never see the light of day. He will die in prison, and deservedly so. Well, that is it, guys. The case of Jimmy Maketta, another South Africa's worst serial killer, also known as the Jesus Killer. So consider subscribing to my channel if you have not, and don't forget to click the bell notification so that you do not miss out on any of my true crime uploads. And I will highly appreciate it if you commented down below and let me know what you think of Jimmy Maketta, what you think of this entire case. What do you think the police went wrong? And I will highly appreciate it if you share this video far and wide. Well, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time with the next video. Goodbye.